Okay, welcome to ASP.NET Section 3. In this section, we're going to be going over partial views, how to use them in our larger views, and the Razor syntax required for doing that. If you haven't done so already, if you haven't completed part 1 of this section, you'll need to do so before continuing. That was to create views for some other objects in the Premiere model. I wanted you to create views and controllers via the add scaffolded item method for the reps, the parts, the orders, and the order line models. That way you should end up with a folder for each of the views. Depending on how you added them, your controllers will already be in the controller folder, or you may need to manually select and drag them in there. So make sure you have that first part done with the scaffolded items added for all these, and then we can get going. The first thing we are going to do is, if you take a look at the index page, you can see mine's already looking a little bit different. Now, this is just the home page, the base page that we load into. Up here at the top, this navigation bar, that's the first thing that we're going to move into a partial view. So what you want to do is, since we like to keep our things organized in our project, under the views, you're going to add a folder called partials. Inside that folder, the partials folder, add another folder called shared. This will be for the partial views that will be shared throughout the website. You can see here I've already worked through, so I have the count, the footer, and the header files all created. It's kind of a convention to put an underscore at the beginning of any partial view file, just so when you look at it right off the bat, you know that it's a partial view and it needs to be incorporated into a larger view. So once you have those folders added, right click on the shared folder and you'll want to add a view and call that underscore header. Once that file loads up, it'll actually be empty. It'll just say, I believe, view bag title underscore header, and there may or may not be something below that. It should be a pretty empty file. What you want to do is go to the layout file, and this first big div section here is what's containing that navbar header. You can see here it's got the class around the immediate divs telling it that it's the header. Down here it's telling it how to behave when it collapses. So here's the full extended view, and then if you were to shrink the web browser down to half screen or smaller, on my screen, might be different on yours, you get the little drop down menu instead. Okay. So what you want to do is select that entire full div, that entire navbar, copy that text, and then paste it into the header file. So all you have is the view bag title and then the full div. And you can see here that I have added some action links. I'll get to those in just a moment. Okay. So what I've done here is this link, the first list item in this unordered list, is still the home index, the home index link. And the last two are also still from the home controller, the About and Contact pages. What I've added in here is these 5 links. And you can go ahead and pause the video here, copy the code if you need to. Copy and paste will be your friend. Once you enter in one, you can just copy and paste it and then modify the text. So again, as we went over before, action link requires a link text, an action name, and a controller name. So for the customers link, we've named it customers. The action name, or the function that will be called, it's index, and the controller it should be looking at is customers. So it's going to look at that customer controller up here. It's going to call that index function, and it's going to render the index view under customers. And that is what each of these links will do, just for the separate controllers. So with the header file added in and saved, you can head over to your customer index view. And pardon me. Once you have the header saved, you'll want to go to under the shared folder, the layout file. And if you recall beforehand, in one of the previous lessons, we talked quickly about how view start is the first file that is called. If you take a quick look at that, you can see that all that's in there is it's telling it that the layout should go look at the layout file. So we can skip over that one, head over to the layout file. Well, I may have said earlier that we were in the index file when we grabbed that nav bar. I meant to say that we're in the layout file. So once you've pulled out all that text, put it into the header file, you come back here and we use the HTML dynamic helper to call the partial HTML file that we created. So you start with the @ symbol, because we're using the Razor syntax that tells it that we're going to be using something from the Razor engine. We call the partial view. In here I have a strongly typed file path. This first slash with nothing before it, the first forward slash, tells the ASP.NET framework to look in the base folder for the project, and then it moves out from there. It tells it from the base, look into the views, then look into the partials folder, then look into the shared, and grab that header.cs HTML file. And once you have that in there, you should be able to fire up your project. And once it loads up, you should see something similar to this. Ignore the bottom here. This is the footer. That's part of your homework. So I guess don't ignore it, but don't worry about it right now. That's something you're going to be adding in. So you can see it's as simple as that. Just a little bit of typing, and you can create a custom navigation header that'll actually be present across all of your web pages, or all of the pages on the site. And a little bit more about the layout file. You can see here that we've called the partial view, and then just below that, we tell it to render the body. Whatever model that the layout is currently handling, it's going to render the body that we have laid out in the view. For the main index page, it lays out the base default text that's in here that we have yet to replace. For the customers or the reps or the parts table, it would be the display table that you might remember from the couple previous installments. So, at that point, you should have the header done. Part of your homework, along with adding the header in, is to do the same thing and add in a footer. And you can see up here, I've already created a footer class. And if we step forward with my changes a little bit, I'll show you my project structure here also. Under the partial shared, there's that footer file that I created. And in the layout, I replaced the copyright text information with calling another partial, this time pointing it at the footer file. In the footer file, I'd like you to replace, well, when it opened or when it's first created, it'll be basically empty. What you're going to do is copy in all of this information, so it's going to be nearly identical to the header file, except the view bag title will be _footer. Excuse me. Otherwise, it will be the same div structure, the same navbar structure. I'd like you to replace the HTML action link that's here present in the header with the copyright information that was originally in the footer that you want to replace in the footer partial view. So this action link will no longer be a link like up at the top, it'll just be copyright information. Another thing you'll need to worry about, and I'm not going to give you the full answer, is the class structure here, or the class name. So you can see that this is navbar, navbar inverse, navbar fixed top. This is going to have to be modified so that the navbar that you're adding into the footer will not be pushed to the top of the page. This navbar fixed top styles it so that this navigation bar from the header is pinned to the top of the web page. If you don't change this in the footer class, it's just going to render that same navigation bar right over the top of the other one, and you won't be able to tell the difference. So you're going to have to modify this in some way to get it to stick down at the end of the page. And that is a quick walkthrough of footers and headers being created using partial views. One other partial view we're going to do, just to make sure that you have some good practice with it, is going to be called _count. This is going to be used on every index page except for the home index page to display the number of items that are in the table that's being displayed. So for the customers table, or for the customers index page, it will count all the entries in that table. Same for the reps. On the index page, it will count all of the index, or all of the entries into the reps table and display that for the user. So go ahead, right click, share it again, create count.cshtml, and when you open it up, again, you're going to have just the basic information there. I think that when you create a view, the header 2 is already there. If it's not, go ahead and add in h2. So what you're going to have here, go ahead and just copy the code, is that @ symbol. Again, I'll try to quit saying it after a while, but it indicates that we're going to be using the Razor engine, and we open up a block of code using the bent parentheses, or open brackets, and here we declare a variable named count, and we're telling this partial view to look at whatever model that it is handed and count however many items are in that model and assign that value to count. So whatever model or whatever view we call this partial view from, the current model that's being handled by that view is also going to be accessible to this partial view. Therefore, we can just type in model.count and get the value from it. And then in the header size 2 element, I put these on 3 separate lines just for readability, no matter how you type it out, because you're in an header element, it's going to render it in one line. So open up the Razor syntax. Here we're going to tell it to look at the view bag, which you may remember from everywhere else. Every other view file that we have has a viewbag.title. But here we're looking at viewbag.modelName. And that's a property that I'm going to show you how to set here in a moment. So we tell it to grab the model name, and we tell it to display just the plain old text count equals, and then here again we're opening up the Razor syntax one more time for this line, and we're telling it to use the variable count that we assigned earlier in the file. So now that you have your very simple count partial file completed, head over to your customer index file. I happen to know which one mine is. You can, of course, select it over here. Now, what we've done, or what I've done and what you will do, is in the first Razor block that's opened up, where the view title or viewbag.title is assigned, we can create the property viewbag.model and assign it to customer. A little bit about viewbag is it's a dynamic property type, which means that, it's a dynamic object, which means that you can add any property that you want to it. If you're familiar with JavaScript at all, you can do this with any object in JavaScript. If you just start out with the object dot and then add in a property name, in this case we're going to use model name, and we're going to set it equal to customer, because here we're using the customer model. So with that dynamic property added and set, down here where it says header to index, I believe is what it originally said, replace that by calling the partial view like we did for the header, and you will have done for the footer. Point at the appropriate file, partial shared underscore count. And now that's going to render that view that we created, the count view, on the top, right above the table on the customer's page. Now, after you've added that in, you can load it up and test it out if you like. Otherwise, just move ahead with adding it to all of the other index pages that you have. So for the order line, for the orders, the parts, and the reps, come in and add this line, the viewbag.model. Since we're in the order line, we're going to call it order line, and then in the HTML partial, make sure it's pointing at the count file. And you go through, add them all in, and that will allow it to display the information that we coded. So if we open it up here, I've got mine running. And you can see here up at the top, the navigation bar with the additional links changed to Premiere Web App. Then if you look down here on the bottom, got slightly different styled navigation bar, and copyright information is in there. Kind of hard to read, but there it is. So from here you can go to any page you'd like. I'll go to the order lines. Hopefully I still have the project running. Yes, I do. Okay, and it's loaded up. And you can see here is the count partial view being shown. We have the order line from the viewbag.model name property we created, the plain text count equals, and the variable 10, which, if you feel like counting, corresponds directly to the order line count in the table there. Go back to the reps page, and I believe there's only 3 reps, maybe 4, 3 reps. You can see that the count partial view has been rendered and updated. And on any of these pages, you can see that the footer down at the bottom and the header up at the top are also present. So we have 3 partial views that will be reused on any of these pages that we load: the customers, reps, parts, orders, order lines. The base files in the home view, the home, which is the home index, the home about, and the home contact views, they will still render the header and footer navigation bars, but of course we didn't add the partial view to that, the partial count view, so those would not be included in there. And yeah, that should do it for us then. Quick walkthrough of how to create partial views, how to reference them from other views and make sure they are rendered, how to also add information to a view bag and pass that along to any other partial views that the parent view might be using. So work yourself through the project, make sure you have the header created, the footer created, get them displaying appropriately at the top and bottom of the page, modify your layout page to call both of those, and add the count partial view, and make sure it's referenced and called on all of the index pages that you created in the first section. The list of screenshots that I will require for your homework will be in it'll be in a document that's included with this content, and good luck.